Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another daily devotion. I'm recording this devotion for broadcast on the morning of Monday, March 28th of 2022. We are in the 8th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. Today we're going to look at verses 14 to 17. And to recap where we're at here, Jesus has done the Sermon on the Mount in chapters 5, 6, and 7. Now in chapter 8, as he's coming down from the mountain, he first encounters the leper, then he encounters the centurion. The centurion here coming for his servant to be healed, actually, rather than we talked about in Luke's gospel, where he sends the elders from the Jewish temple or the synagogue. Here, the centurion comes himself and approaches Christ. And so those two things have happened already. Now we get to the story where Jesus is going to heal Peter's mother-in-law. He's going to go to their home in Capernaum, Capernaum is where Jesus really bases his ministry out of at this point. But this is his first venture into Capernaum this time. When he healed the centurion's servant was his first venture into Capernaum in Luke or Matthew's gospel rather. In Luke's gospel, he goes to earlier. He is in Capernaum and heals Peter's mother-in-law, and then coming back, he heals the centurion's servant. But this story shows up in all three synoptics. It is in Mark in the first chapter, it's verses 29 to 31, if you want to look it up. In Luke's, rather, it's in the fourth chapter, and it's verses 38 to 40 in Luke's gospel. Happens much earlier on, but because it is in all three, we believe that the source for Matthew and Luke is Mark, and not this mysterious thing called Q or Quilla, the source in German. So that is where we believe the source to be. It might be in Q as well, but it's in all three synoptics, so it's probably the source is probably Mark. That would be the consensus, I believe. So let's take a look at these verses and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Matthew chapter 8, verses 14 to 17. When Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to serve him. That evening they brought to him many who were possessed with demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word and cured all who were sick. This was to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took our infirmities and bore our diseases. Okay. And that last verse, verse 17 there, remember, Matthew is the most Jewish of the Gospels. And Matthew is focused upon fulfillment of Scripture, fulfillment of prophecy, the foretelling. So this is from Isaiah 53, and I believe it's verse 5, particularly in Isaiah 53, where you would find this. 5. But he was wounded for the wrong he did. He was crushed for the evil we did. The punishment which made us well was given to him, and we were healed because of his wounds. Okay, so we are healed. He took our infirmities and bore them on himself. Okay, pulled them onto himself. So like a sponge, perhaps, if you want to look at it that way. So that is what is believed, is that this is what Matthew's getting at here is a fulfillment of Isaiah 53. So he's entered Peter's house. There's a couple things going on here. Remember, we talked about the leper shouldn't have approached Jesus. He was unclean. He shouldn't have gotten that close. Jesus certainly should not have touched him. That was not proper. Okay, that was Jesus touching an unclean person, and therefore Jesus would have been considered unclean. But Jesus is saying, you can't unclean me because I'm God. And then next, the centurion approaches him and wants him to come or wants him to heal his servant. And of course, the centurion is a Gentile. He is unclean. He's not supposed to come anywhere near Jesus. But the one thing that's interesting there is he tells Jesus, he does have some concern for Jesus in a way, and that he tells him he doesn't need to come to his house. So therefore, Jesus would have been definitely unclean if he'd have walked into a Gentile's home. And so it's interesting there that the centurion, I didn't mention that on Friday, that the centurion seems to have some concern for him. But now we have Peter's mother-in-law. Jesus has gone to Peter's mother-in-law's home, or Peter's home, where Peter's mother-in-law is at, and she's in bed. Well, now, I suppose one could say it's okay for Jesus to be in the house because there are male relatives of hers there, but he certainly shouldn't approach her bed and touch her. That would not be proper by any means for a man to touch a woman that was not of his relationship, and certainly not to touch her when she's lying in her bed. That would be a no-no, as we say. So there's three no-nos in a row here. No to the leper, no to the centurion, and no to touching a woman in bed. So Jesus just is piling up the no-nos in his healing, but he's racking up healing after healing. And then after that, and that evening, now everybody's heard about these three things that have gone on, and three, of course, is a significant number in Scripture. But people are bringing him demoniacs, are bringing him people that are sick of all kinds of illnesses, and he's casting out spirits, and he's healing folks left and right, and he's just working miracles one after another. And therefore, that's when Matthew brings up this Isaiah 53. He's taking on the burden of the sins of the world in metaphoric standpoint, at least at this point. Okay, we'll get to really doing that at the end of the book, but here at this point, we've got a little bit of a metaphor, him taking on the pain and the sins and the brokenness in those illnesses, and driving away that has possessed us. So there's what we have for this little bit of Scripture. We will continue on tomorrow when we pick up with verses 18 to 22, and it's a little change of direction for a little bit here. And Jesus will get back to healing again before we get done at the end of this chapter, but a little bit of a diversion here for the next couple days. All right. So with that, I'm going to let you go for today. Have a blessed day. We'll see you back tomorrow, and be a blessing to someone today. Tell them about Jesus. Okay. Bye-bye. God bless.